Hello, good afternoon everyone. Welcome to this ETP webinar on the Knowledge Exchange Network. My name is Brian Cross, I'm ETP's project manager, and what I'm going to do today is give you an overview of the Knowledge Exchange Network, what it is, what it's achieved, and how and why we think you should get involved. Before we go to the presentation itself, I'd just like to explain how it's going to work. I'll be providing a 15 to 20 minute presentation of the features of the KEN. We would invite you to raise questions through the chat facility at any time you like. My colleagues Syra and Jenny will be assisting me in the background, handling the technology behind the scenes. And then when the presentation's finished, we'll organise a Q&A session, and I'll invite Syra to read out some of the questions that have been raised so that we can hear them commonly and I can answer them. I've provided my full contact details, as you can see on this slide, and I would encourage you during or after this webinar, if there's anything of interest that you want to pick up with me, please feel free to email me or call me on my mobile. I've also provided here the ETP website address, and that is really a fundamental part of the webinar itself. If you go to the website to pick up some of the contact information, then everything should work there. I would also just point out for everybody's information, we are recording this webinar so that we can use it for repeat transmission and put on our website. So hopefully that's okay. So let's get started. So a bit of background about ETP. ETP as an organisation has existed for some 10 years or so, and it is in actual fact a Scottish research pool organisation, and that means that a group of universities have come under a common banner to pool their research expertise, and in this case the particular expertise is in energy. And on this slide you can see that we have currently 13 Scottish university partners. Now, it's important to remember as we go through this presentation, when I start to talk about ETP's funding, the funding can only be used between Scottish SMEs and one of these 13 partner universities that you see here. So if you're a member of staff from another university, unfortunately, you're not able to apply for our funding, and I'm just making that point now. So we've got a group of 13 universities. Collectively, that group and the academic research that's ongoing in Scottish universities and this group of universities is something like 700 academic members of staff. It's a huge resource, and in Scotland we're very lucky that we're a small enough country for everybody to be well connected, and ETP, during its Knowledge Exchange Network programme, over 10 years has established a very strong, very well connected part of the energy research environment. And I think this is particularly helpful for individual small to medium-sized enterprises who might want to be involved with that vast array of expertise and facilities that's out there. And it gives them, ETP gives a very useful starting point for that engagement. So KEN aims are to support innovation, so support innovation in Scottish SMEs. And by supporting that innovation, what we're trying to do is harness the expertise that's available from the research community. And then in harnessing that research expertise and supporting innovation, we are looking to assist the energy transition and look at new product and process development for low carbon energy products. And all of this activity must have an economic impact for Scotland. So when we go about our activities, we're not about pure research, we're not about activity that is solely confined to the research laboratory. It must be something that has a practical application, it must be something that involves an SME, and it must have economic impact. The KEN itself, and we call the Knowledge Exchange not the KEN, By knowledge exchange, we mean all those processes of involvement between universities and SMEs, where they exchange ideas, expertise, know-how, all of that activity. And our ETPs Ken programme is a full and comprehensive programme of activities between the partner universities and Scottish SMEs. And again, I've worked for all my career in this line of business. And time again, I see that the Scottish condition that we have, the relationship between our universities and our industrial partners is second to none, in my opinion. And certainly ETPs Ken has established a very, very strong mechanism for all of that collaboration to take place. So the Ken itself includes things like one-to-one business support for companies. So companies are contacting us to say, here's where I am, here's what I'm trying to do, can you help me? It involves a whole programme of meetings, events, seminars, involving companies in collaborations, either between themselves and other SMEs or with universities. And more recently, the activity also extends to the provision of brokerage services, where we're actually brokering between SMEs and funding that's around. It is a very, very involved process, and I'm pleased to say that, you know, over the period that ETP is involved, it's gotten bigger and better every single year, and if ever there was a time to be involved in it, now is the time. The Ken programme is certainly, in my experience, a catalyst for accelerating academic industry knowledge exchange. And it's a fully connected part of the Scottish energy R&D landscape. So again, if you're an academic member of staff and you've never heard of us and you're in one of our 13 partner universities, the advantage of being involved with it is we will connect you with all of that activity that's going on. If you're a Scottish SME that's never heard of us, getting connected with us puts you in touch with that research community that I mentioned earlier. And the connections between companies and universities just keep growing and extending. Similarly, if you're neither of those and you're an intermediary organisation who's involved in energy and you want to have more contacts, more impact, more connectivity within the scene, we'd be more than happy to work with you and make that happen. So the message I'm putting across there is Ken is nothing if not a method of connectivity and energy. The Ken is funded by, the statement funded by the Scottish Government, Scottish Enterprise, Highlands and Islands Enterprise, and the 2014 to 2020 European Structural and Investment Fund. So there is European money there supporting the work that we're doing in the Ken. Part of the Ken is something called the Industry Engagement Fund. This is where ETP actually provides funding to support SME and university projects. So that programme is a 3-year funded programme for Scottish SMEs running from the 1st of April 2019 to the 31st of March 2022. This is the third phase of this type of activity that's taken place. And it builds on the successes of the previous phases. It supports SME and university knowledge exchange. And grants of up to £10,000 can be applied for low carbon energy projects. Alternatively, you can apply for a grant for £3,500 if it's a project that's largely going to be based around student activity. And any project that is successful in acquiring ETP funding must have a 30% contribution from the SME partner. Now, this contribution can be in kind, but it must be real. And by that, I mean, at the end, the company has to be able to detail the staff time that will be brought to the project and how it will intermix with the university expertise. We've lots of experience of making these kind of applications work. We know how to do it. And again, just by way of explanation, £10,000, if £10,000 is the grant amount, then the company contribution is over and above that. So to get £10,000, the total project cost would have to be £14,285, just the way the arithmetic works. So the SME's contribution is that £4,285. It's a relatively straightforward process. The projects themselves must be low carbon energy projects. If it's not a low carbon energy project, it's not for us. It must be a product and or process that's being commercialised. We do get approached very often by companies that are the very early stage of developing a concept or an idea. And once we start to have conversations about the commercialisation, they say, oh, it's too early to say. Well, if it's too early to say, it's too early to come to us. As part of our application process, we specifically ask about the commercial impact that the project's going to have on the company and on the Scottish economy. So it must be something that can easily be shown to have economic impact for the company and for the Scottish economy. It must be a Scottish SME, and in very, very exceptional circumstances, a company that's not Scottish by registration, etc., but has a strong Scottish presence or Scottish impact, or an office in Scotland with staff, etc., may be considered. But the fundamental aim of this programme is to stimulate activity for Scottish registered SMEs working with the partner universities. Applying for funding is reasonably straightforward, but the first and foremost part of your connection with the Ken in general should be to contact one of our relevant ETP business development managers. And I'm going to give information about those individuals in a minute. I've been, as I said before, I've been involved in this line of work for almost all of my career. I absolutely wholeheartedly believe that success in this area relies on the connections that can be made and the individuals that are willing to make those connections. And the ETP BDMs are just that group of people. They work with academic research funders to understand what research is ongoing out there. They work with SMEs to understand what products and processes are being developed. And they do the link exercise. So to apply for funding, the first thing to do is find out which BDM and which theme, and I'll talk more about that later, which ETP energy theme relates to your company or your academic research, and then use that BDM to help you go through the process. And the first part of that process is to link you up with a KE partner, whether that be an SME or an academic partner. Then there's an application form. There's two stages in that, but it's a relatively straightforward application form. The business development manager will work with you hand in glove as you prepare that application. It's not a standoff approach. We really want those things to be as complete and successful as we can possibly get them. And then once, if that's been approved, those stages have been approved, a contract signed and the project starts. ETP aims to give a decision on applications within 1 week. So it's a fairly short process once a full application has been submitted. And the other thing is around 75% of the applications we get are successful. Now that's quite an astonishing figure, I think, when you look at most of the other funding that's around. The reason for that is it goes back to me saying, if you start early enough with your contact with one of our BDMs and then are able then to talk with your respective KE partner, very quickly we'll be able to understand whether or not what's being proposed is fundable by ETP and whether or not we've got something that we can make a solid application out of. So it's a process that you've got a high degree of success in if the criteria that I described earlier are being followed and if the programme of work is something that's going to lead to a commercialisable product. This is just, it's a lot of words, but really it's here designed to give you we do use a lot of acronyms in our line of work, and we shorten the themes that our business development managers are related to down to 3 letters, 2 letters, ECS, energy conversion and storage, etc. So it's just to give you that information as background. And it also shows you which universities they're linked to. Now that's shown maybe perhaps easier on the eye in this version here. So we've got 7 individuals, or 8 individuals, sorry. There's a job share at Heriot-Watt University between 2 individuals. We've got 7 business development manager posts spread across those universities that you can see here. And you can also see that some of those individuals are shared with other organisations. We can see that in the energy systems area, Natasha Madeira is the business development manager, and she's shared between Strathclyde and the Energy Systems Catapult. Emma Church, who is the Heat Energy Business Development Manager, is shared between Glasgow University and Construction Scotland Innovation Centre. Norman Morrison, who's the Wind Energy BDM, is shared between Edinburgh University and Wave Energy Scotland. And Alex Loudon, Norman Morrison's Marine Energy, beg your pardon. Alex Loudon, who's the Wind Energy BDM, is shared with the Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult. So again, you can see that the picture here is in connecting with ETP and the ETP BDMs. Before you do anything else, you're automatically connected to at least these other organisations, and so it continues. And again, I'm stressing that strong message. A connection through ETP is a connection into this very wide, very far-reaching energy network. The Knowledge Exchange Network is all about, you know, links between industry and academia. And we've got our BDMs in the sort of process at the interface, creating the Knowledge Exchange Network. And as I've said before, that Knowledge Exchange Network's got a whole variety of things in it, including the funded projects that I mentioned, but also these other connections and wider aspects and activities. Just to give you some sort of idea as to what the impact of that program's been, since the beginning, almost 800 separate forms of support have been provided to Scottish SMEs, and that's to around about 500 separate individual organisations. And you know, those include event activities, collaboration activities, project activities, one-to-one support sessions, etc., etc. And as we grow and extend and expand, more and more organisations, more and more academics are being involved and talking to each other and working through project activities, etc. Part of the ETP philosophy that's backed by Scottish Enterprises philosophy is to try to get companies to consider something called an innovation journey. And by that, we mean we understand that to get a brand new idea or concept from the idea or concept phase through to commercial development, there might be a number of steps. Now, this diagram here was prepared by ETP, and it attempted to put together as a kind of set of stepping stones the possible steps in funding that an SME might encounter on their innovation journey, and what funding is available and how they can get there. Now, this information is dynamic. It does change very rapidly. And in fact, I've tried very hard to simplify this document, because the truth of the matter is there's so much funding that's available out there that sometimes it can be you know, daunting for either an academic researcher or an SME as to know which step to take next. But the philosophy that we've adopted in ETP is that, as well as helping people to access our own funding, we're helping them to understand what other funding is around and how they can access that, and working with them on the innovation journey. In some cases, for academics, this might be, if they've created a spin out, it might be the entrepreneurial journey that they're on. So they know what the technology is, they've got the technology, and they're now trying to commercialise that. And again, ETP is very keen and very able, I think, to provide support and guidance and you know, signposting and everything that's involved in that, which is why the philosophy and the thinking behind a knowledge exchange network works and applies. When I worked for the major part of my career in a single university, I was always frustrated at the fact that on a diagram like this, I would see a company at one stage and I wouldn't know what happened to them next, and you know, whether or not they'd go on to be successful. In ETP's work over the last 2 phases of the KEN programme, we've started to analyse and identify the evidence that shows that companies who work with us through the KEN do go on to do further and more impactful R&D activity. And in fact, the figures show us that you know, the ETP companies that have come through our Knowledge Exchange Network programme have accessed over £40 million worth of other R&D funding from Innovate UK and some of the things that are on this diagram here. So it's clear to me that there is definitely an innovation journey taking place, and it's also clear to me that the ETP Knowledge Exchange Network, if not the first point in the journey, it doesn't have to be, is certainly a very, very useful part of that journey. So that finishes the presentation itself. Hopefully I've covered everything that you might want to know about the general programme. So what we'd like to do now is move to a question and answer situation. So Saira, are you able to maybe lift some of the questions that have been asked during that presentation and we can answer them?
Yes, I've got a question here. Somebody said, from looking at the current projects on your website, it seems to include a lot of decision support systems. So the product or process you mentioned, can it also be a computer model, piece of software or user interface?
The short answer to that is yes, but one of the things that we are conscious of is that we operate in an environment where we've got the innovation centres that are around about us. We've got other forms of funding that are targeted at specific things. Increasingly, we find that energy projects do have a strong requirement for gathering information, manipulating that information and using that information to make things more efficient. And where we can see clear evidence that the process of gathering and using that information or creating a model or whatever is very much targeted at reducing CO2 emissions, reducing energy use, etc., then that's likely to be something we can fund. But there are a lot of projects around that are using information not specifically for energy or carbon reduction processes. So the answer is yes, when, again, the principles of, is it a low carbon energy project? Is it a product or process that's being commercialised? And is it a Scottish SME? Anything else, Sarah?
Yes, we have a question. I'll just break it down into two. So the first part is that an SME recently approached a webinar participant that's joined us today, and they are very willing to seek for funding to develop a couple of projects. Can she receive help from ETP regarding the most suitable schemes of funding that they should apply for?
Absolutely. One of the things that we know in the work that we do is that, and I think I said it during the presentation, one of the most daunting things that any SME can be faced with is a whole set of, here's all the funding that's available, now get on with it. It tends not to work very well like that. So my advice there is identify a BDM who's working in an area that's close to the technology that you're doing, and look at our website, look at the information I've provided in this seminar, or even just come directly to me and say, here's what I'm trying to do. Can you help me find the next step or stage on my innovation journey? And that includes whether it's ETP funding or something else. That's exactly what we want our Knowledge Exchange Network to be providing. And as I say, when it's an application directly for our funding, we can make that happen. When it's an application for funding from another source, we may well have experience through our business development team in actually preparing applications there. So more than happy to try and do that.
So the second part of that question is, Brian, you mentioned that the project must be a low carbon energy project. Could you please be more specific on that? Can, for example, a research on the creation of a product from waste that can be commercialised be considered as such?
Again, the short answer to that would be yes, but you know, we're aware of, for example, all the activity that happens through Zero Waste Scotland. And we're also aware of the emerging range of activities that are happening through the climate challenge, etc. ETP's specific remit was to do low carbon energy projects. Now, in the initial discussions between the company and the BDM, they will start to talk about, so really what is this project? Now, I'd like to re-emphasise something. We're not in the business of ETP of saying, you've got to apply and we've got to say yes or no. It's not like that. It's what we're trying to do is we're trying to help companies that are working in the right area that can be funded by us to present a case that can be funded. So I just go back to the point of, you don't have to be cloak and dagger about it. You can be perfectly upfront, come straight to a business development manager, tell them exactly what you're trying to do. And then if there's part of that activity that looks likely that it can be funded by us, we will help you channel that and frame it such that it meets the requirement. And if it is maybe better, it's felt that might be better put somewhere else, we'll help you to signpost towards that, or even make the application as well if we can.
We have a question around timescales. Are there any future dates to bear in mind, or is there an open submission? And also, when does the board meet to decide on what to fund?
Okay. Yes, it's open submission, so the programme will remain open. There's no set deadlines or dates. Timescales, well, I said in the presentation, if you mean by timescales, it will take you time to identify and talk to a BDM and a research partner and then prepare an application. When we get that application, we aim to turn that around in a single week. And most of the time we can do that, notwithstanding the kind of conditions that we're operating in just now. So by the time we get that application, it'll have been honed and worked on by both parties that are involved in the programme. We make the decision, and then you move to the next stage, which is where you're telling us what you're spending the money on. And again, we aim to support that in about a week. So in a relatively short space of time, you can get it in. You might mean by timescales, how long can the project be delivered over? We would expect most of these projects to be delivered in a 3 to 6 month timescale. Some do take longer than that, but that's the kind of target period we're expecting for delivery. So hopefully that answers the points that you raised there.
We have a question around which BDM should somebody contact if the topic is related to electromagnetic wave and energy.
Interesting. I'd need to know a wee bit more about that. You know, on that one, if you drop me a wee note with some of the background, as you can imagine, although we've got operational themes and we've got BDMs that work against operational themes, the technologies that are inside those themes sometimes do overlap. And what we tend to do is we tend to look for where the impact's going to be. So if the impact's going to be through reducing heat or something like that, then we would tend to view that as a heat project. Or if the impact's going to be, developing a new energy system, then we might say that's an energy systems project. So that it's not easy to just off the top of my head just select one. But what I should say is, if it is a low energy project, it'll be something that can be fitted into one or more of ETP's themes. So please just drop me a note with some background information and I'll help you to identify who you should be talking to.
That's all the questions we've received so far.
Okay. Just on that point, I would stress again, for anybody that's listened to this seminar today, I've got any questions or whatever, don't hesitate to contact us. If you want to use me as the starting block, that's fine. That's what I'm there for. You can contact me to say, look, we've been working on this. We're thinking about that. We're not sure if this is directly, the type of thing you're after. All of that is perfectly acceptable. And then we'll try and help you frame whatever it is that you're approaching us with to something that we can consider. And just like the last question, identify quickly a BDM who's got particular expertise and then line you up with him. I should say about our business development managers, all of these people have been working now through the Ken 2 programme, as we call it, the second phase of Ken, and now into Ken 3. So they've been doing this for at least 3 years. And before that, they had expertise in industry that relates to the theme that they're in. So they are good people to speak to. They also, as I said before, in their day-to-day jobs, they're constantly out, trying to identify new contacts, new sources of information, expertise, anything that can be used and brought to the table for our academic and SME partner organisations to make use of. So again, it's in your interest to get involved and let us know you're there. And in fact, this is a message out to members of the academic community. Having worked in this line of business, as I said, almost all of my working career, the biggest single challenge that we've got in trying to link up academic expertise with the outside world is knowing in the first place that you're there and what your expertise is. So I would encourage you that if you're not heavily involved with us through Ken or anything else, make some contact, let us know what you're about, let us know what your research group is doing, and then we're in a position to try and make sure that when inquiries come up and businesses approach us, that you can be approached. Okay. Anything else? Hello?
Hi, we haven't received any more questions.
All right. So if there are no more questions, then I guess we'll end this seminar here. Again, just a reminder that the contacts for the BDMs are available on our website. The individual BDMs, if you're not sure which of them you should be speaking to, just drop me a note and ask me. If there's anything else you want to talk about, if you'd rather speak on the phone, my mobile number's there. You can drop me an email. We'll take that forward. But the key thing I would say is ETP's Ken network is extensive. It's been grown over about 10 years and it is expanding. We've got links with the Scottish Enterprise, Highlands and Islands Enterprise, Scottish Development International. We're looking to make sure that, our work, the work of the innovation centres, the work of our sister research pool organisations dovetails as much as it can. And it is a complex picture, but we've put a framework around that, and I think we've got something that's very successful and it's worthwhile being involved in. So if there are no final questions, then I'll end the seminar here and just say thank you very much for everyone for taking part and being involved.